7:11 a.m. on Monday, Adeline Cross watched the glass turn her reflection into a version the building was about to reject. The lobby of Halcyon Meridian was engineered for reassurance: stone floors, muted lighting, controlled silence. Stability had branding. 7:12 a.m. Adeline Cross pressed her badge against the reader. Red. Not delayed. Not confused. Red. She tried once more, slower. Red again. The guard glanced at the tablet before he looked at her. "It's showing inactive," he said carefully. "Inactive. Not terminated. Not separated. Inactive." 7:14 a.m. Adeline Cross stepped aside so the line behind her could keep moving. No scene, no raised voice, no optics problem. Silence is not surrender. It's camouflage. "Let me call upstairs," the guard offered. "Of course," she said. 7:18 a.m. The elevator doors opened and legal stepped out. Victor Harlan, general counsel, measured, polished, dangerous in the way men are when they believe exposure can be negotiated. "Adeline," he said evenly, "we'll take this privately." She nodded once and followed. 7:21 a.m. Inside the executive elevator, Victor kept his hands folded. "We're restructuring for alignment," he said. "The compliance function needs to be streamlined. Less friction, more partnership." "Less documentation?" Adeline Cross asked. He did not answer that directly. 7:24 a.m. The glass conference room was already lit. Inside sat HR, the COO, and a woman Adeline had never seen before. Crisp blazer, fresh badge, controlled smile. Title on the nameplate: Director, Compliance Optimization. A role that did not exist last week. 7:27 a.m. HR began with rehearsed calm. "This is not performance-based." The COO leaned forward. "You're technically exceptional, but your approach creates instability. The board wants smoother optics." Optics. The new director smiled slightly. "We believe the exception reporting can be reduced. It's creating unnecessary anxiety in executive reviews." Reduced, not resolved. Reduced. 7:30 a.m. Adeline Cross opened her leather notebook. Matte black. No logo. Inside were dates, deltas, and footnotes no one else had bothered to read. Victor noticed it immediately. "There's no need to document this," he said. "There's every need," she replied. 7:33 a.m. The tablet slid across the table. Separation agreement, clean exit, immediate access termination. "Your badge and laptop will be collected today," HR said gently. "Of course," Adeline Cross answered. She handed over the badge. Then she reached into her bag again and removed a small, unlabeled USB drive. Victor's composure shifted by less than a millimeter. "What is that?" the COO asked. "My work product archive," she said calmly. "Policies, draft versions, notes. That belongs to the company. It does not contain proprietary system data," Adeline Cross replied evenly. "Only authored documents and time-stamped correspondence." She flipped to a marked page in her notebook. 8:42 p.m. Thursday. Exception queue cleared without remediation notes. 9:03 p.m. Thursday. Executive override logged under shared credential. 11:16 p.m. Friday. Vendor classification change footnoted as temporary without control sign-off. Silence entered the room and stayed. Skinos Duras. 7:38 a.m. The COO's tone hardened. "Are you suggesting misconduct?" "No," Adeline Cross said. "I'm documenting sequence." Victor leaned back. External audit was scheduled in 6 weeks. The room knew it. She knew they knew. 7:41 a.m. HR tried to regain rhythm. "This conversation is about transition." "Exactly," Adeline Cross said. She closed the notebook, clicked the clasp shut, stood. 7:44 a.m. At the door, she paused. "Exception suppression does not minimize exposure," she said quietly. "It compounds it." She didn't threaten. She did not warn. She left. 7:46 a.m. The badge remained on the table. The USB remained in her hand. The system remained intact. For now. Absence is the cleanest form of revenge. 3 weeks before her badge turned red, Adeline Cross had already stopped trusting the dashboards. Not because they were wrong, because they were smooth. 8:17 p.m. Wednesday, Adeline Cross remained in her office after most of the compliance team had logged off. The floor lights had shifted to evening mode. Soft, efficient, uninterested in drama. Halcyon Meridian's exception dashboard showed a 32% reduction in unresolved variances quarter over quarter. The COO had called it stability. The board deck used the word alignment. Adeline used a different word, suppression. She did not say it out loud. She verified. 8:42 p.m. She drilled into the raw export instead of the summary visualization. Exception ID HX-44721. Status cleared. Remediation notes blank. Timestamp 6:03 p.m. User credential EXEC-OPS-GLOBAL. A shared executive credential. Streamlined for efficiency. Minimized for exposure. 8:46 p.m. She cross-referenced the override log. The control required dual authorization for reclassification of vendor risk tiers. Second signature missing. Yet the system marked it compliant. That was the first crack. Not catastrophic. Not loud. Just mathematically wrong. 9:04 p.m. She opened the vendor reconciliation file for Q4. Page 117. Footnote 6. Temporary classification adjustment applied pending executive review. No reference ID, no control sign-off, no audit trail attachment. She read it again, then once more. The footnote was not an error. It was camouflage. The door behind her shifted slightly. Still here? The voice belonged to Quinn Harper, Junior Compliance Analyst. 24, sharp. Too observant for politics. Yes, Adeline Cross replied, without looking up. Run the Q4 override log against vendor tier movements. Quinn hesitated. The dashboard already shows zero material exposure. I'm not asking for the dashboard. 9:19 p.m. Quinn rolled his chair closer, laptop balanced on his knees. Why would they override tier classification without secondary sign-off? He asked quietly. They wouldn't, Adeline said. Unless optics required stability before audit. Quinn's expression changed. He understood enough to be nervous. 9:27 p.m. The cross-reference populated. 3 vendor tiers downgraded from high risk to moderate, all within a 90-minute window. All cleared under the same executive credential. All lacking secondary approval. Maybe it's temporary, Quinn offered, too quickly. Temporary classifications require documented remediation timelines, Adeline Cross said. These have none. She did not accuse. She recorded. 9:34 p.m. Quinn leaned closer to her screen. Should we escalate? That word. Escalate. Adeline closed the file and turned slightly toward him. What would escalation accomplish without sequence? She asked. He didn't answer, because he knew the truth. It would accomplish visibility without protection. The next morning, the COO sent an email. Subject, Exception Reporting Optimization Initiative. Language, streamline redundant flags. Reduce unnecessary volatility in executive materials. Enhance perception of stability ahead of external audit. Perception, not correction. 10:12 a.m. Thursday. In the compliance team huddle, the new director of compliance optimization, still weeks away from replacing Adeline officially, dialed in remotely. We're minimizing noise, she said brightly. The board wants alignment. Adeline watched Quinn's reaction from across the table. He was taking notes. Too carefully. After the call, Quinn approached her desk. Are we suppressing exception flags? He asked under his breath. No, Adeline Cross said evenly. We are reclassifying them. He swallowed. That's worse. She didn't disagree. 6:58 p.m. Friday, Adeline reviewed the override log again before leaving. One more entry. Exception ID HX-44803. Status cleared. Timestamp 5:47 p.m. Credential EXEC-OPS-GLOBAL. Same pattern, same silence. She opened her notebook, wrote the time, wrote the delta, wrote the missing control. Then she underlined one phrase. Footnote 6. She did not send an email. She did not alert legal. She did not confront the COO. Silence is not surrender. It's camouflage. Instead, she began building sequence. If the external audit followed the system logs instead of the executive deck, the discrepancy would surface on its own. Unless the logs were adjusted before then. That was the real risk. The following week, exception resolution rates improved another 11%. The dashboard celebrated. The board deck glowed green. Quinn stopped making eye contact during meetings. He had seen the crack. And once you see structural stress, you cannot unsee it. 8:03 p.m. Monday, alone again in her office, Adeline Cross exported the override activity for the quarter and saved it to a secure offline archive. Not proprietary data, just her analytical work product. Time-stamped, versioned, accurate. She labeled the folder with one word, sequence. The crack was small, but gravity does not require noise. It requires mass. And Halcyon Meridian was accumulating both. The trap was not loud. It was administrative. That made it cleaner. 9:02 a.m. Tuesday, Adeline Cross noticed her name missing from the External Audit Readiness Steering invite. She had chaired that meeting for 3 consecutive quarters. The calendar line read, Owner, Director, Compliance Optimization, Required, COO, Legal, Finance. Optional, none. Not even a courtesy ad. She did not ask to be included. She opened the pre-read instead. 9:11 a.m., the deck attached to the meeting invite showed a new slide. Exception Stabilization Summary. The wording was deliberate. Not reduction. Not resolution. Stabilization. Footnote 6 had been rewritten. Temporary reclassification aligned with executive review protocol. Aligned. The word felt rehearsed. Across the room, Quinn shifted in his seat during the weekly compliance sync. His laptop screen reflected something he wasn't supposed to see yet. An email draft. Subject line, Control Streamline Phase 2 Approval. Sender, Director, Compliance Optimization. Recipients, COO, Legal, Finance. CC, Quinn Harper. Not Adeline. 9:24 a.m. Quinn forwarded the draft to her with one line. Is this normal? She read the body. Per prior alignment with compliance architecture. No such alignment had occurred. Below that, a signature block. Approved by A. Cross. Her name. Initialed. Digitally formatted. The trap was elegant. Remove her from the meeting. Reference alignment that never happened. Embed her approval into a control change that diluted dual authorization. If the audit questioned the override sequence, her name would anchor the decision. Exposure minimized. Responsibility redistributed. 9:31 a.m. Adeline Cross didn't respond emotionally. She compared the signature in the draft to her historical digital approvals. The formatting was slightly off. Her usual approval language included one phrase, pending validation of secondary authorization. This one did not. Subtle. Intentional. 9:37 a.m. She walked to Quinn's desk. Did you receive the Phase 2 email directly? She asked. Yes, he said quietly. I thought you were already looped. I was not, he swallowed. Should I reply all? No. Silence is not surrender. It's camouflage. Instead, she opened the document metadata. Himri. Version history. Original author. Director, Compliance Optimization. First draft timestamp, 7:58 p.m. Monday. Embedded approval block added, 8:11 p.m. Monday. User credential, EXEC-OPS-global. The same shared executive credential, the same sequence pattern. The trap wasn't just about removing her. It was about manufacturing consent. 11:04 a.m. The steering meeting began without her. Glass conference room. Door closed. Deck displayed. Quinn watched from his seat in compliance operations. He was present as support, not as a voice. The director presented Phase 2. We're simplifying dual sign-off to a single executive credential to reduce friction. The COO nodded. Will audit question this? Legal asked. Compliance architecture has aligned. The director replied. Aligned. The word landed like a forged signature. Scene 11:22 a.m. Quinn's phone buzzed under the table. Message from Adeline Cross. Screenshot slide 12. He hesitated for half a second. Then he did. Slide 12 contained the revised control flow diagram. The second authorization node was removed, replaced with a single executive credential, EXEC-OPS-GLOBAL. 11:28 a.m. Legal asked one more question. Any dissent internally? The director smiled slightly. No material dissent. Technically true. Adeline had not escalated. She had documented. 12:03 p.m. The meeting adjourned. Approval granted pending documentation update. Quinn remained seated after the room emptied. His hands were not steady. He had witnessed the shift from optimization to liability. 1:14 p.m. Quinn walked into Adeline's office. They used your name, he said. I know. They removed dual authorization. I know. They said you aligned. She closed her notebook slowly. I did not. She turned her screen toward him. On it was a comparison matrix. Column A, Original Control Architecture. Column B, Phase 2 Revision. Column C, Regulatory Requirement under Federal Healthcare Payment Compliance Guidelines. Column C still required dual authorization for vendor tier reclassification. Phase 2 eliminated it. Will audit see this? Quinn asked. If they follow the logs instead of the summary, she replied. And if they don't? She met his eyes evenly. Then the liability will attach to the approval trail. Her name, digitally embedded, without consent. 4:42 p.m. She drafted one email. Not accusatory, not emotional. Subject, clarification on Phase 2, approval reference. Body, I have not provided authorization for removal of secondary credential validation in vendor tier reclassification controls. Please confirm documentation accuracy. She did not send it. Not yet. Sequence first. 6:09 p.m. She received the finalized Phase 2 document. Her name remained in the approval block, time-stamped earlier that day. The trap was now recorded, official, circulated. She opened her notebook, wrote, Approval inserted without authorization. Underlined, EXEC-OPS-GLOBAL. Then she added one more line, External Audit, 6 weeks. Gravity accumulates quietly. She did not reply all. She did not confront the director. She did not call legal. Instead, she archived the metadata, version history, and email headers. Time-stamped, offline, precise. Because the trap was not the removal of her authority. The trap was the assumption that she would react. She did not. Absence is the cleanest form of revenge. They expected resistance. They prepared for escalation. They did not prepare for quiet. 8:06 a.m. Monday, Adeline Cross joined the weekly compliance alignment call as if nothing had shifted. Camera on. Voice steady. No reference to Phase 2. No mention of her name in the approval block. The Director of Compliance Optimization led the call confidently. We're minimizing volatility before external audit, she said. Everything is under control. Under control. Adeline typed notes. Not objections. Silence is not surrender, it's camouflage. 9:42 a.m. The Phase 2 documentation was uploaded into the Central Policy Repository. Control ID HM-VR-221. Revision status, approved. Approval reference, A cross. Her name remained. She did not correct it. Not yet. Instead, she requested something ordinary. Please provide full override activity export for Q1 through current date. She emailed IT. Reason, routine architecture validation. Routine, the safest word in corporate language. 11:18 a.m., Quinn walked into her office with a printed report. They increased executive override usage by 19% this week, he said quietly. Under which credential? He didn't need to answer. EXEC-OPS-G LOBAL. 1:07 p.m., she built a reconciliation grid. Column 1, vendor tier movements. Column 2, override credential. Column 3, presence of dual authorization. Column 4, regulatory requirement reference. Column 5, Phase 2 justification language. The pattern held. Dual authorization, absent. Regulatory requirement, unchanged. Justification, stability. 3:22 p.m., she opened the external audit planning packet from the prior year. Sampling methodology, randomized selection of 12 high-risk vendor tier changes. She compared that to current override volume. If override velocity continued, probability of audit sample intersecting an executive override without dual sign-off increased exponentially. Not dramatic. Mathematical. 4:51 p.m., Quinn returned. "Why aren't you escalating?" he asked. She closed the audit packet. "Escalation without sequence becomes accusation," she said. And accusation invites defense. He understood. Defense creates narrative. Sequence creates evidence. The director began including language in weekly updates. Compliance architecture aligned with Phase 2 control streamlining. Aligned. Repeated often enough, it becomes history. 8:11 p.m. Wednesday, alone in her office, Adeline Cross reviewed metadata again. Phase 2 document last modified. 6:42 p.m. Tuesday. Approval block embedded. 6:44 p.m. Tuesday. Credential EXEC-OPS-global. 2-minute delta. Too precise to be organic. She saved the file hash to her offline archive. Hash values do not argue. They verify. The following Friday, a new email circulated. Subject: External Audit Pre-Read Stabilization Summary. Slide 12 remained unchanged. Dual authorization still absent. Her name still present. 9:03 a.m. Friday, she requested one more dataset. Vendor claims linked to reclassified tiers. If vendor tier shifts affected reimbursement flows, exposure expanded beyond compliance optics. It entered financial reporting. That was the gravity layer. 2:18 p.m., Quinn ran the cross-reference. 3 vendors whose risk tiers had been downgraded showed increased reimbursement volumes. Not illegal, but unexamined. "Is this material?" Quinn asked. "Not yet," Adeline Cross said. "But it could be?" "Yes." Silence deepened. She stopped correcting small errors in meetings. Stopped offering technical clarifications. Stopped volunteering risk language. The director grew more confident. The COO relaxed. Legal reduced check-ins. Stability improved. On paper, 6:58 p.m., Monday, she finalized a timeline document. Page 1, Control Architecture prior to Phase 2. Page 2, Metadata Comparison. Page 3, Override Velocity Analysis. Page 4, Regulatory Cross-Reference. Page 5, Financial Linkage Probability. No adjectives, no accusation, only sequence. External audit was now 3 weeks away. If the sampling intersected one executive override without dual sign-off, questions would follow. If it intersected a vendor tied to increased reimbursement flows, scrutiny would widen. And if audit traced the approval trail, her name would appear. Embedded, digitally clean, unauthorized. That was the real trap. Not removal. Liability transfer. 8:37 a.m. Tuesday, she finally sent the email she had drafted days earlier. Subject: Clarification on Phase 2 approval reference. Body: I have not provided authorization for removal of secondary credential validation in vendor tier reclassification controls. Please confirm documentation accuracy. She CC'd. Legal. IT governance. Internal audit. Not the COO, not the director. No emotion, no accusation, just clarification. 8:49 a.m. Victor from legal responded, "Let's discuss offline." She replied, "Happy to. Please confirm whether my digital approval was system-generated or manually embedded." Precision removes comfort. The director did not respond that morning. Override activity slowed by 6% that day. Velocity responds to visibility. Silence had done its work. Sequence was complete. Now gravity required an external force. External audit. Absence is the cleanest form of revenge. But timing is the sharpest. External audit did not arrive with noise. It arrived with sampling logic. 9:02 a.m. in Monday, the external audit team logged into Halcyon Meridian's compliance repository for preliminary walkthrough. 3 auditors. Neutral expressions. Uninterested in optics. Interested in sequence. The Director of Compliance Optimization opened the session. We've streamlined controls to improve efficiency and reduce unnecessary volatility, she said smoothly. The lead auditor, Mara Ellison, nodded once. Please walk us through vendor tier reclassification controls, Mara said. No emphasis, no suspicion, just request. 9:18 a.m. Slide 12 appeared on the screen. The revised control flow, single executive credential, EXEC-OPS-Global. The director explained it confidently. We centralized authorization to reduce friction and improve alignment. Was dual authorization ever required? Mara asked. It was redundant. Adeline remained silent. Camera on. Expression neutral. 9:24 a.m. Mara requested override logs for the last quarter. Random sample of 12 high-risk vendor tier changes, she said. Probability does not negotiate. It selects. 10:11 a.m. Sample 4 loaded on screen. Vendor ID V-88317. Original, tier, high risk, reclassified, moderate, override. Credential EXEC-OPS-Global. Secondary authorization, not present. Mara paused. Please provide documentation of dual validation, she said calmly. The director smiled slightly. We eliminated redundant validation in Phase 2. Phase 2 effective date? Mara asked. 2 weeks ago. Mara scrolled. The override timestamp on Sample 4 predated Phase 2 implementation. Silence entered the room. 10:17 a.m. Mara zoomed into metadata. Approval reference, A Cross. She looked up. Ms. Cross, can you confirm this authorization? Every camera turned toward Adeline Cross. This was the moment they had assumed would never occur. She did not rush. She did not defend. She did not accuse. I cannot confirm authorization for removal of secondary validation, she said evenly. I requested documentation accuracy clarification last week. Mara's eyes shifted. To whom? Legal and IT governance. Victor's face remained controlled. Too controlled. 10:22 a.m. Mara requested system-level metadata for the embedded approval block. IT shared screen access. Last modified timestamp, 6:44 p.m. Tuesday. Credential EXEC-OPS-Global. Mara leaned slightly forward. Who has access to that shared credential? The COO answered. Executive Operations Team. How many individuals? 5. And does the system log distinguish user identity behind the shared credential? No, it did not. Gravity shifted. 10:31 a.m. Sample 7 loaded. Another override. Another absence of dual validation. Another approval reference tied to A Cross. This one intersected with a vendor showing increased reimbursement volume. Mara did not react emotionally. She simply expanded the sampling size. Let's review 20, she said. Probability widened. 10:44 a.m. Mara asked a final question. Was dual authorization required under regulatory guidance prior to Phase 2? Adeline answered before the director could. Yes. Is that requirement still present in federal healthcare payment compliance guidelines? Yes. Has the regulatory language changed? No. Silence became structural. The director attempted narrative control. We believe the shared credential provided sufficient executive oversight. Mara did not respond to belief. She responded to documentation. Please provide written regulatory interpretations supporting that position, she said. There was none. 11:12 a.m. The session paused for internal document retrieval. Victor requested a sidebar. Cameras off. Private call. Why didn't you escalate earlier? He asked Adeline Cross. I documented sequence, she replied. You allowed this to proceed. I requested clarification. It was not addressed. Victor exhaled slowly. Exposure had shifted. Not toward volatility. Toward traceability. 1:03 p.m., audit reconvened. Mara's tone remained even. Based on sampling, we will expand review to full override population for Q1. The director's posture changed almost imperceptibly. Full population review removes probability. It reveals pattern. 2:18 p.m., IT delivered override export. 19 reclassifications under EXEC-OPS-Global. 14 lacking dual validation. 7 predating Phase 2. 3 tied to increased reimbursement flows. Sequence complete. Mara closed her notebook. We will issue a preliminary finding regarding control deficiency and approval governance. Deficiency, not optics, not alignment. Deficiency. 3:41 p.m., the COO's office door closed. The director remained seated in the glass conference room. Alone. Her narrative had collapsed under timestamp. 4:12 p.m., Victor emailed Adeline. Please prepare formal documentation of original control architecture and timeline. She replied. Attached. No delay, no commentary. She had built it weeks ago. That evening, override velocity dropped to 0. Shared credentials were suspended. Emergency internal review initiated. External audit had not attacked. It had followed sequence, and sequence had led exactly where it was built to lead. Absence is the cleanest form of revenge, but traceability is the quietest weapon. The system corrected itself the way large systems always do, quietly, with memos. 8:03 a.m. Thursday, an internal notice circulated. Temporary suspension of shared executive credentials pending governance review. No names attached, no blame assigned. Language, proactive stabilization. By 10:17 a.m., the Director of Compliance Optimization's calendar had been cleared. Her assistant responded to inquiries with one phrase, out of office. No return date. 11:42 a.m., Victor from Legal asked Adeline Cross to meet. Glass room, different tone, less controlled. We're conducting an internal review, he began. Your documentation was helpful. Helpful, not correct, not necessary. Helpful. He slid a new document across the table. Amended separation terms, extended severance, full release of liability, neutral reference clause, non-disparagement language, stronger NDA. We'd like to resolve this cleanly, Victor said. Cleanly, she repeated. The word had been used often lately. She opened the document slowly, read every line. Precision requires patience. 1:08 p.m., she spoke. The Phase 2 approval block referencing my name must be formally corrected in repository and audit trail. Victor nodded. Already in progress. And written confirmation that I did not authorize removal of secondary validation. He paused. That can be provided. And indemnification for any regulatory findings tied to override governance during that period. That was new. He looked at her carefully. You're asking for protection. I'm asking for alignment with documentation. Silence stretched. Then he nodded once. 3:26 p.m. Internal Audit circulated a corrective memo. Approval reference for HM-VR-221 incorrectly attributed. Secondary validation removal not authorized by compliance architecture. Her name was no longer embedded. The repository version history reflected amendment. Metadata updated. But the earlier hash remained in her archive. Sequence preserved. By 4:52 p.m., she received final confirmation from Legal. Written clarification attached. Indemnification clause inserted. Severance extended by 4 additional months. No admission of wrongdoing. No public correction. Only documentation. She signed, not triumphantly, not emotionally, just precisely. 5:18 p.m., she packed her office. Laptop already surrendered weeks earlier. Only personal items remained. The leather notebook, the unlabeled USB. A framed photo of her father standing in front of a small accounting office decades earlier. Underneath the photo, in fading ink, accuracy is quiet strength. She placed it in her bag. Quinn appeared at the doorway. "Is it over?" he asked. "For me," Adeline Cross said. "For them?" She considered the question. "The system will adapt," she said. "It always does." He hesitated. "They were going to let it attach to you." "Yes." "And you didn't fight." She met his eyes evenly. "I documented." 6:07 p.m. She walked through the lobby. No badge this time. Visitor pass, temporary. Security nodded politely. No one else looked up. Stability had resumed, on paper. Override governance had been reinstated. Dual authorization restored. Shared credential dissolved. External audit findings marked as control deficiency remediated. No scandal, no headlines, only footnotes. Absence is the cleanest form of revenge, but precision is the cleanest exit. Absence does not announce itself. It registers in delay. 9:14 a.m. 2 weeks later, the override report for vendor V-902011 flagged an anomaly. Not catastrophic, not illegal, but inconsistent. The dual authorization had been reinstated after audit. 2 signatures now required. But the secondary approver had misread the risk tier delta. The discrepancy was small. 6 basis points in reimbursement allocation. Small enough to pass a dashboard. Large enough to compound quarterly. The Director of Compliance Optimization had not returned. Her role was listed as under review. The COO now chaired compliance meetings personally. He spoke less about optics, more about documentation. 10:32 a.m., Quinn sat in the compliance pod, reviewing the anomaly. He stared at the control log. He noticed something. The validation comment field was blank. No narrative, no explanation, just signature. He opened the archived architecture documentation, the one Adeline Cross had built. Page 3. Under vendor tier reclassification, a handwritten annotation scanned into the PDF. Secondary authorization must document rationale variance, no exceptions. That line had not been formal policy. It had been practice. Her practice. 11:07 a.m., Quinn walked into the COO's office. "There's a delta in V-90211, he said carefully. The COO frowned. "Was dual authorization applied?" "Yes." "Then it's compliant." Quinn hesitated. "It's compliant structurally, not analytically." The COO looked at him. For the first time, uncertainty replaced control. "Fix it," he said. The system had restored dual authorization. It had not restored judgment. 1:48 p.m., Internal Audit circulated a follow-up memo from the external auditors. Governance improvements noted. Continued monitoring recommended due to override pattern volatility in Q1. Volatility. The word returned. This time it was theirs, not hers. Override velocity had dropped. Documentation length had increased. Meeting times had doubled. The dashboard glowed green. But meetings were slower. Decisions more cautious. Language more precise. Alignment now meant traceability. 4:23 p.m. Quinn sat alone at his desk and opened his inbox. One new message. From a private email address. Subject, sequence. Inside, a single line. Documentation is the only narrative that survives audit. No signature, no commentary, just a hash value attached. He recognized it. The original file hash from Phase 2 before correction. Sequence preserved. He closed the email. Did not reply, did not forward. Silence is not surrender, it's camouflage. 6:02 p.m., the COO stood in the same glass conference room where Phase 2 had been approved. Slide 12 had been revised again. Dual authorization node restored. A new box added, rationale documentation required. He stared at the diagram. He understood something now. Controls are easy to reinstate. Integrity is not. In the lobby, nothing had changed. Stone floors, muted light, controlled silence. But the building processed risk differently. Slower. More carefully. More aware of audit trail gravity. No one said her name in meetings anymore. But they referenced her framework. Her matrices, her terminology. Sequence. It became a shorthand. When someone asked, "Is this stable?" someone else would answer, "Check the sequence." Absence is the cleanest form of revenge, not because it destroys, but because it reveals weight. 8:11 a.m. 1 month later, the board reviewed the quarterly compliance summary. Override usage, reduced. Dual authorization, reinstated. Audit finding, remediated. The COO spoke carefully. We've strengthened governance. No mention of why it had weakened. No mention of who had warned first. Only documentation. Outside the building, life continued. Elsewhere, Adeline Cross reviewed a different system. Different architecture. Different board. Her notebook remained the same. Matte black. Precise. Unemotional. She opened it. Wrote one line. Stability without integrity is temporary. Closed it. And moved on. Absence does not echo. It calibrates. And gravity always remembers sequence. Lessons learned 1. Documentation outlives position. Titles are temporary. Access can be revoked. But documented sequence, timestamps, metadata, controlled language survives beyond employment. In regulated environments, memory loses to records. 2. Silence is a strategic tool. Immediate escalation often triggers defense. Quiet observation builds pattern. Pattern builds leverage. Silence is not weakness when it is intentional. 3. Optics cannot replace controls. Dashboards can glow green while governance erodes underneath. Stability without verification is performance. Real stability is traceable. 4. Shared credentials. Dilute accountability. When 5 people hold one key, no one owns the door. Systems that prioritize convenience over traceability eventually face audit gravity. 5. Never react before you build sequence. Emotion creates narrative. Sequence creates evidence. In corporate conflict, the side with documentation controls the outcome. 6. Liability travels through names. If your name appears in an approval trail, your responsibility follows. Protect your signature the way others protect their bonuses. 7. Audit is not an attack. It is a mirror. External review does not create risk. It reveals what was already there. Fear of audit is often fear of documentation. 8. Integrity is a control, not a personality trait. Compliance frameworks fail when integrity depends on individuals. The strongest systems embed accountability into architecture. 9. Absence reveals weight. You do not need to destroy a flawed structure. Remove precision from it, and gravity exposes the weakness. 10. The cleanest revenge is professional excellence. No sabotage, no scandal, no public accusation. Just accuracy, timing, and the refusal to sign what you did not authorize. 11. Power without traceability is fragile. Executive override may accelerate decisions, but speed without governance becomes liability disguised as efficiency. 12. Leave with leverage, not emotion. A clean exit is negotiated through facts, not outrage. Precision protects reputation long after separation agreements are signed.